Hi, my name is CJ and this is my RC channel. So I'm going to go ahead and rebuild these diffs. I'm going to start by taking them apart and cleaning them. Be careful as you take them apart because there is a couple of seals and a gasket that you want to try to salvage. Okay, nice, clean, clear diff fluid because this has never been run. And this is a hot racing differential case. It's an aluminum diff case that will replace this plastic one. RVO 11X06 is the part number. And it looks like it's going to use the standard gasket that is part of this. Everything, gears and all, should swap over. So the first thing to do is to... One thing I highly recommend that you do, even if you're not a serious racer, if you're just... you just want to kind of learn what makes a car handle. One of the keys to doing that is recreating things and making subtle changes, singular changes, and then seeing how that affects handling. Like, you know, adjusting your ride height, adjusting your camber angle. And if you do a bunch of things at one time, you're never going to know what did what. You may get a better handling car, but you won't know why. And that's what setup sheets are for. And you can go online and just search for your vehicle and blank setup sheet. And they're really easy to find. You can usually find them on the manufacturer's website. So if you've got in the case of my 1/8 scale on-road race car, it's a Serpent SRX8. I could just go to their website, and not only do they have a blank one, but they have a basic setup, and then sometimes they'll have a setup from a sponsored racer, like one of their pro racers who won a national event or something. Now, you know, that can be a baseline to work from, and you can use, you know, the stock one and or the race one as a kind of a starting point. But you have to remember that conditions are different. For example, when I usually get an off-road race car, like the last time I was racing 110 buggies and bought the new kit, I went and found all the setup sheets I could find and basically kind of looked through them for commonalities. First, I organized them by the type of track. So, you know, I put all the clay and indoor hard pack setup sheets together, and then I took all the outdoor, you know, loose, loamy track setup sheets and put them in another pile. And then I looked for commonalities and what were the differences between the two. And that helped me build a nice baseline setup that, you know, gave me decent handling and was a good place to move up from. So, you know, there's a tremendous amount of things we can do on this vehicle to change how it handles. Just the camber link positions, you've got 4 different positions inboard and 2 positions outboard. Not including the toe and camber angles themselves that you can adjust, and you know how those change the car. You've got roll center, bump steer, toe angle, and all of these things you want to make singular changes and see how it handles. the first step is learning to drive decently. Learning to be smooth and get around a track consistently, so you're getting about the same lap time every lap. Then you can make changes and see how those affect your lap times as well as your driving style, because you may end up with a handling setup that doesn't feel right to you. It feels a little uncomfortable, it's a little sketchy, but your lap times have gone down. And so that's something that you go, okay, I need to learn to work with this. I need to learn to drive this better. And then you try to find ways to get the bad edges off of that setup, as it were. Anyway, I'm going on, and what I want to talk about here is the differentials. There are 3 of them, one in the center, one in the front, one in the rear. And there's a whole lot of theory and practice that goes into, you know, setting these up. The lighter area, the less resistance is where the power goes. So a good basic setup is a heavier center differential, and a slightly heavier front differential, and a lighter rear. A heavier rear is going to get you a harder to control vehicle. I'm not going to go into all of this right now. Basically, I'm kind of experimenting here because this is my first Slash, and so I have no idea what my you know, what this is going to result in. So I'm going to give you an example here. I downloaded a setup from someone by the name of Razor, and you know, here's his setup sheet with all of his settings. He's running, let's see, he's running center diff with 100K, that's 100,000 weight fluid, which is very, very heavy. And let's see, okay, and his front diff is 20K and 10K in the rear. Now that's a good one right there, 20 and 10. This is for off-road, so I might go a little heavier, like 25 or 30 in the front, and maybe 15 or 20 in the rear, and probably take a little out of the middle, maybe like 50, go half that. You know, this is a starting point that I'm gonna go from. I'm not gonna, you know, win the lottery on this first setup and never need to change these fluids again. But the main thing is that whatever I put in here, I'm gonna write it down, and I'm gonna, you know, that's why I'm, you know, starting a fresh blank setup sheet, and I'm gonna go ahead and, you know, write all these every setup position. I'm going to mark it down, and that way I know what I'm starting with. So in a week or two, when I want to, you know, change up these diffs a bit and maybe try some different fluid weights, I know what I put in there, because I can go right here on my sheet and I can see center diff, front diff, rear diff. So that's something you should get in the habit of doing, even if you're not, you know, trying to race at a high level. So let's see, we're doing our front diff. So I think I'm going to do 30 in the front. I'm going to do, let's see, do I have a 15? Yes, I'm going to do 15 rear, and thinking about going with the 100K that he recommended, but I'm thinking maybe I'll try 40 first and see where that goes. So these are the 3 I'm going to need, and I'm going to get out my trusty pen, And the center diff is going to be 40. Front is going to be 30. Rear differential is going to be 15. And we'll see where that takes me. And we are going back into the plastic stock case. No, it's not right. It's the other way. 90 degrees. These things just want to stick together instead of going in. There we go. Okay, I just want to test this without really closing it up. Yeah, okay. So, set that aside. It may be that it's a different gear set is needed for these to make these work with the Slash. It may require the gears out of the car, the X01, I think it is, or something like that. I don't know. I'm gonna call the manufacturer or email them and see if I can get an answer, because I'd like to use those, but not if they're not gonna work properly. Okay, 30. A little more. It's hard to get just a little because this stuff is so thick and sticky. And one of the things you're going to find after you do a couple of diffs is that you need to clean everything, your tools, your table, So let's get this gasket. Okay, now the gasket's even easier with the stock one. You can see there's these little pins here, here, and here. And then we got our holes over there. These little rectangles right here and right here. Those go in between the pins. And of course the holes go over the holes. Fairly self-explanatory. Gotta rotate that. And those little pins there and there are going to match up to these 4 little holes. They're not through holes, they're just like dimples. Okay, let's make sure that we're lined up on our holes. And I'm going to use the original screws. Oops, wrong one. Okay, okay, I must have moved the gasket. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. To make sure that I am getting this down in position, I'm going to set it down with at least one bolt sticking through. And line that up. This little gasket is being the bane of my existence. That fluid is so thick. I got an idea. I'm gonna get the holes, the bolts through. Oop, can't let that spill. You'd see it was just starting to run. That stuff is so thick, it was like taking its time. We get all 4 bolts through the gasket. There we go. And then I'm going to lower them onto the holes that they screw into. Hi, hon. I'm working. I'm working. Trying to work. Damn it. These diffs are the biggest pain in the ass any I've ever worked on. Got one screw started. Remember, there's a rubber gasket there, so you don't need to over tighten. You just need to get things nice and snug. Okay, let's see. Do we have a good gear rotation? Yeah, there we go. That's what we're looking for. I mean, you can feel the gears, but, you know, it's spinning 360 degrees without massive effort, which is, it wasn't doing that with the other one. So okay, so this one is built. Big bearing goes on the metal side, thin bearing goes on the housing side, gear goes to the left hand side. Fortunately, this thing is already full of grease. And pinion gear is covered. Don't over grease this. It's open anyway. It's not fully, you know, sealed, so it doesn't benefit you to over lubricate. As you can see, any excess grease just gets flung up against the side of the case. So I can take this excess grease here, reapply to the gears, and whatever is needed will stay, and the rest of it will just fly off on the case again. Okay, is that this way? I believe so. No, that's those stainless. Now, if you recall, I said I was going to put this RPM one in the rear and put the rear one in the front. Since that is not as strong and stiff as this one is, I'm going to go ahead and put this one up front, and I'm either going to replace the rear one with another one of these, or maybe get an aluminum one for the rear. I'll probably get one of these because they're nice and light. That goes in there. So let's see. Well, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and connect my drive shafts. Let's see if I've got stainless pins. Nope. But I have new ones with a little bit of Loctite on them. Here we go. So that goes in the spare stuff. Okay. Okay. Let's see, 1, 2. So those are going to be long ones. Those are the short ones. So okay, let's do one. So that's small. Yeah, that's too long, too long. That's the right size on this. That's the right size. Okay, let's do ones here. Yeah, try. Just like the longer one. Let's start up. Again. So you can think to circle these out until the fast little piles are little containers. Okay, maybe 2 of those. There's 1, 2. Okay, so again, the short ones go up top, long ones down here, and then long ones attaching the front arms. Okay, those poke out a little bit, so I can go with the shorter ones. Let me put one of these in and make sure it's got enough thread. Yeah. Because that was going to stick out the back side about 1.5 millimeters. That's just not necessary. And that comes almost to the rear. Could feel it, the tip of it with my tip of my finger. Could feel it just starting to come to the end. Yeah, see, if you look here, you can see all that thread is going to get screwed into the housing on the back side. So these are long enough. No problem. But the next two, excuse me, I'm sorry, I've got really bad allergies today. Okay, now the next two are to anchor these, and let's identify our old position. Okay, by the hole that has threads, it was about there. So, because these have a couple extra holes, so that's something I'm going to need to draw into my my diagram, my setup sheet, because I've got a different configuration here. It's going to show 4, and now we have 5 because of this replacement part. So here's the thing I'm thinking. Okay, yeah, see, that's going to go almost all the way through. That's perfect. So I was thinking that I might go with a slightly longer screw, but these already are a little longer, so that's great. That way, these are actually going to go totally through this mount, in one end and just out the other. they're never going to pry free. If you use hardware that's a little short, like this would even allow me to put spacers, but I'm not going to need spacers because moving this arm in this direction doesn't change anything with the geometry. If it was moving it up and down, it would. Like if instead of having the holes here, it was flat and you had several holes that way to move, you know, forward and backward, and then you could raise it up and down by putting spacers underneath here in between this and the base. That would be another story, but as long as this goes through, we are fine. And I'm just going to go ahead and buzz this in. Because I am tired of wearing out my fingers. I think I put that on backward. No, that's the way they had it. Okay. You'll notice that there are two sides to this ball cup here. One is wider than the other, and they actually point to that on the setup sheet for one of the linkages. I believe it's this one here. It changes the bump steer angle. You could just as easily do that with some 0.5 millimeter and 1 millimeter shims. Dial down the clutch on here. Okay, so that is all together. So as you can see, they do penetrate fully, so that's great. They're not gonna come out or loosen. So we've got new bearings out here. We've got new drive shafts. We got new bearings on either side of the diff. We've got new bearings on either side of the pinion shaft, and we've got new fluid in the diff. So we're making really good progress. So now let's see if I'm lucky enough that this has the same number of splines as my servo, which I believe is a 25 count. And that just says C. That doesn't tell me anything. So, first thing to do when you work with new servos, especially since we're going to be taking this, since this is going to be hidden underneath there and we would have to disassemble to get at it, you always want to center your servos. This is a trick I especially use when I build airplanes, but it is just as valid here. And what I want to do is make sure that the servo is at center. And it's always good to test it and then hit center, and it is centered. So now, how is this going to go? Up or down? I think it's going to go down like that. Sorry if you may not see this as well. I'm having a hard time seeing it myself. Okay, there we are, more or less centered. Any, yeah, that's almost perfectly straight down. Any little bit of deviation there I can correct with sub trim in the programming on the radio. Okay. This isn't the right screwdriver for this. I just want to kind of get it started so the arm doesn't pop off on me. And then I'm going to grab a better screwdriver before I try to tighten this. Always get the right tool for the right job. Okay. Solid. Tell me that's in the right direction. Nope, it needs to be pointing upward. God damn it. Excuse me. Blasphemy! Okay, I'm going to recenter the servo just to be sure. I may have gotten it offline a little bit. These little items here are very handy. You have a main, auto, center, neutral, and auto. Auto just makes it swing back and forth. Main lets you rotate the knob all the way from one side to the other. And I usually take it all the way to one side and then I click again to neutral and that centers it. $10, $12 on Amazon. Get yourself a simple radio battery pack. That way you don't have to plug in a car pack or have an ESC going. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel.